Welcome to this edition of Insider Secrets, the weekly podcast that turns real estate investing goals into reality. Each show, we interview guests who are seasoned real estate professionals, actively closing and managing real estate deals. Mike is the founder of My Core Intentions and would like to help you make your real estate investing dreams a reality. Mike coaches you to buy investment real estate, creating short-term cash flow and long-term wealth. Your host and real estate coach, Mike Morawski, has more than 30 years of real estate investing and property management experience. Here's your host, Mike.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It is Mike, your host of Insider Secrets, brought to you by My Core Intentions. I ask this question every week, but what's your intentions today? When you got up this morning and you started to look at your day and your daily disciplines, what were your intentions? What did you decide to do? What were you going to accomplish today? And better yet, what are your intentions for the year? How are you going to change where you're at today to where you're going to be tomorrow? It's often said that if you make one little change in your day, 1% little change on something every day, you will grow 365% throughout. I'm glad that you're here today. And I never ask for anything except that you would just please go to wherever you hang out on social media, like me, love me, whether it's My Core Intentions or Mike Morawski, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, I'm everywhere. Like us, love us, follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube. We try to continue to bring you great relative content, just like today. I am so excited about today's guest because I'm joined for a second time by my good friend, Paul Moore. Hey, Paul, you want to say hi real quick?
Hey, good morning. Great to see all of you. And Mike, I'm just so honored to be here.
Good for you to be back. I've been really looking forward to this. I'm really glad that you're here. Let me just tell the listeners a little bit about you as I dig in here, but Paul's with Wellings Capital. He's a true real estate veteran. He's learned a lot over the years and knows a lot. I know that if you just sit back, pull out a notepad, and if you're driving, pull over and pull out a notepad.
Did you say I was a know-it-all?
Yeah, I did. That was something I was thinking about, but thanks for bringing it up. Paul's experience has been from the multifamily space into the self-storage space. He's raised over $71 million in private equity. He's been in the business 21 years. He's an author, loves to speak, loves to share a story, and loves to talk about Jesus. Paul, here's the first question I want to ask you. What have you learned since the last time you and I have been together?
I learned more about my propensity to make decisions on emotion. I'm listening to William Green's wonderful book, Richer, Wiser, Happier. Charlie Munger said it's one of the greatest investment books of all time. It's a new book that came out, and he's talking about the importance of really setting your emotions aside to make great investment decisions. I realize I'm a connector. I love people. My personality profiles all show that. So I realize the role in my company is to connect people with the company and then let more objective due diligence matters and measurements, I should say, take over at that point. I sometimes have to step aside because sometimes I'll say, man, but this guy's great. He's great. But we've got to look at these objective criteria that we all agree to. And maybe it's not the best investment because Wellings Capital, we're not an operator of self-storage, mobile home parks, apartments, industrial. We actually invest with operators. So we do a lot of due diligence, and that due diligence leads us to saying no a whole lot.
Interesting. So we'll dig into that a little bit more. I want to hear more about that. You probably remember this from the last time you were with me on Insider Secrets. In one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
The word I want it to be is integrity. Now, here's what I mean when I say integrity, although I love the classic definition of it. I'm thinking of having my whole life integrated, meaning however you do one thing is how you do everything. I want to do everything. I want to love Jesus in my devotional time when I'm reading the Bible this morning and journaling, but I want to love him in my decisions I'm making. I want to love him in the conversations I'm having. I want to do well with our investments, but also I want to hang the Christmas lights on my front porch. And I haven't gotten around to that yet because I've had too many important things to do. I want to have an integrated life, and I really haven't done that as well as I want to. So that's something I'm working on, talking about adding 1% a day to. That would be something where I really want to have everything integrated under that common theme of excellence and integrity.
Yeah. Boy, integrity, that is a big word. A lot of people throw it around and it doesn't mean much to them. But I think when you really dig in and you really think about what it means, not to you, but to somebody else, if people can walk away from you, Paul, and say, hey, man, there's a guy just filled with integrity, whether it's because you have a relationship with Jesus, whether it's because you are just who you are as a businessman at the core, people walk away and go, wow, that's somebody I want to do business with. In your results of what you've done over the years in the real estate space and raising private capital, obviously people believe that in you. So that's pretty cool. I'm honored to know you. That's for sure. We talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but what is one defining moment in your life or your career that's really made a difference? You might not just have one of them. There's several that come up over the years, especially if you're paying attention. But let's talk about that one defining moment in your life that's made a difference.
Yeah, so I became a follower of Christ in college in the 80s. I always had this problem, and this problem was right here between my ears, and that's in my head. I saw a separation of my relationship with Jesus and the rest of my life, which is, again, going back to that integrity thing. But in 2007, 8, and 9, I was faced with not being able to have that separation anymore. Of course, everybody who's been in real estate or investing for over 13 years remembers 2008 real well. It was November 2007. I had $1.5 million, almost $2 million in the bank when I sold my company as a 33-year-old in the 90s. 10 years later to the month, I had $2.5 million in debt. I actually was facing down 2008, of course, not knowing that, not knowing what was coming, just hoping that the worst of the recession magically was somehow over in 2007. My business partner at the time said, hey, I've got 1 or 2 more months and I'm going to not be able to pay the interest on this debt anymore. You're going to have it all. I'll sign all the properties over to you as well. We had a bunch of waterfront lots at a resort, so they were not cash flowing one penny. They were just sucking cash. To make a very long story short, I was meditating that morning on a Sunday morning, and I really felt like God said, what would George Mueller do? Now, George Mueller was this amazing man of God, and he's not real popular today like he was when I first became a believer 35 years ago. Anyway, he lived throughout the 1800s, and he raised what we believe is maybe $250 million in today's dollars, but all by prayer and faith. He used it mostly to fund orphanages, but also to fund missions around the world. He never asked anybody for a dime. He journaled very thoroughly every penny that came in, where it came from and where it was used. Anyway, I thought, what would he do? Well, I had just read a biography about him. First of all, he wouldn't have debt. So I was already in trouble. The second thing was, I think he would do something really radical and unusual. So I thought, what could I do? Oh, I know. That Sunday morning, I went to church, and for the first time in my recollection, our pastor preached about the life of George Mueller. I had no idea that was going to happen. I thought God had his hand on this. So when I got together with a couple friends in an accountability group a few weeks later who said, what are you going to do? Are you going to declare bankruptcy? It looks like you're going to. I said, no, I'm going to give my way out of debt. And they said, I should have asked my wife. On January 1st, 2008, we're going to start giving this set amount to the Lord's work, church, missions, etc. Every week, we're not just going to give 10%, but we're going to give a set amount every week until this thing implodes and I end up bankrupt, or until God does something to rescue us, which is what I think is going to happen. Anyway, I told my family, and the kids were real young. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever. My wife was, of course, fearful, but she said she recognized we didn't have many options. So we started giving this set amount every week. And 4 weeks into this, 4 weeks into it, I met a guy who gave me an idea. That idea turned into action on my part. And it took a whole lot of action, like a year of really hard work based on this idea that was completely unique and completely, I'm sure, dropped by the Holy Spirit. I ended up being able to sell off a bunch of property just to punctuate that it was God. I ended up selling off a whole bunch. of waterfront property in September and October of 2008, the worst months, the very trough of the crisis. I was able to sell off $1.5 million or so worth of property right then based on this light bulb idea. I ended up completely debt free by 2009.
So you equate that to tithing, to giving back to the Lord.
Yeah. And this was, I don't want to call it reverse tithing. That would surely not be the word. But basically, we set an amount and we said, no matter how much we lose or make, we're going to give this set amount every week. We kept that practice going for about, I think, 10 more years after that same amount. And then we increased it.
Isn't it amazing? I don't want to tell people on this show that they should go give to church or to some ministry or something, but isn't it amazing how the Lord works? I mean, I spent some time in prison for the 2008, 2010 crisis, and life is a lot different today, but I have a tithing story from prison that is just, it's amazing. I made a commitment to a friend of mine who runs a camp that I was going to tithe to camp every week that I was in prison, based on a certain percentage. That percentage continued to grow because so many people blessed me while I was gone. It's just the most amazing thing in the world. The story how I got there was even crazier, but this isn't about me, it's about you. Isn't it amazing when we are open, humble, living a life of integrity, when we're vulnerable to the Lord, what happens, right? Around us, among us, to people around us. It's just interesting to watch. How's that show up in your life?
I discovered guys named Tom Rotolo and Todd White back around 2013. Todd had these long dreadlocks, but he was very passionate for the Lord. He began to just pray for people in public. And I thought, I can do that, an extrovert. And so I began to ask people if they needed prayer in public. And it just turned into so many wonderful, wild adventures, many which I've forgotten over the years, but it's been so much fun. Then sometimes I'll end up talking to an investor or a potential investor on the phone, or even an operator, and they're going through a crisis, and I get a chance to pray with them as well. And that's wonderful.
Amazing when that happens. It's crazy. Hey, let's dig in a little bit, talk about real estate. Let's talk about your history in real estate and where you started and where you're at today as a result of your path.
Yeah, my friend and I were bored. It was the year 2000. I had a nonprofit ministry for international students studying in the US, and there wasn't a whole lot going on with it. So my friend and I, out of boredom, honestly, just flipped a house. Then that turned into dozens of houses. Then I thought, if I can flip a house and make 20,000 or whatever, maybe I can build a house and make 50,000. So I started trying to be a builder, and I learned something really important, Mike, and this is really important for your audience too. If you don't know how to tighten the doorknob on your own house, you probably shouldn't build one. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but that was my experience, at least. That led us into the business of buying waterfront lots at Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia. That's why I ended up buying and selling dozens of waterfront lots. Then 2008 hit. And then during those years, I wondered, how do you get involved in commercial real estate? I knew these big shots were in commercial, and I thought you must need millions of dollars, lots of experience, etc. Anyway, we stumbled into a commercial project when we built housing in North Dakota, Northwest North Dakota, for the Bakken oil rush. There were people coming from all over the country to work there to make $100,000 or so a year, but they lived in these really not great conditions, honestly. So we built these beautiful cabins, basically a multifamily quasi hotel. In 2011, that thrust me into the commercial world. I ended up writing a book on multifamily in 2016. And then fast forward, we set up our funds, and I ended up writing a book on self-storage that just came out a few weeks ago. So our funds, Wellings Capital, we invest in operators who have great asset classes like self-storage, mobile home parks, etc.
So you do a fund to fund kind of investing.
Our goal is to find the very best operators with the best deals. We put them together to give diversification to our investors. And that's what we do. We love syndication, but we also love the fund model, the diversification it can bring for investors.
Before I ask the next question that I have on my mind, I have to ask you, can you put a doorknob in today?
No, but now I don't care anymore.
Yeah. When you raise $71 million of private equity, does it really matter?
Yeah, I'm going to be super forthright with you on that. Ben and I, we just met again yesterday. That's my business partner. We're leaving all the cash we possibly can in the company so we can grow. In fact, now when we need to hire a CFO and we need to hire other people, we have the cash sitting there. Actually, I think I already knew the importance of delegation. What I have learned, though, is the importance of delegating to the right people. When I tried to build a house in, I think it was 2004, I delegated to the wrong people, people I liked, but people who did not have great integrity. And one guy stole a bulldozer from me. Can you believe that?
How do you steal a bulldozer, Paul?
I don't know. He must have hid it in his garage. He still got it, but I didn't have the time to pursue him.
You've said a couple of times in the last few minutes that you invest with good operators. How do you vet an operator? So let's say that there's a passive investor listening this morning and they want to invest money with you, with Wellings, or they want to invest with somebody else.
The bottom line for people, if they're interested in doing it themselves, they can go check out Brian Burke's wonderful book called The Hands-Off Investor. It's basically a 300+ page manual about how to vet syndicators. However, we have about a 28-point process. We check them out. We check their references, check their background. We ask lots of questions. We try to find out how long they've been in the business, how they handled 2008, how they talk about their employees, how they talk about their staff, their investors, their spouse, the waiter or waitress. We try to see what type of people these are at their core. We also try to figure out, do we want to be in a bad deal with this person for the next decade if things go south? And we check their debt structure. We check the type of debt they want to use and that they have used. We check their track record. We just look for really objective measurements like that. We look at their pro formas. How much do they project for future cap rate? We're just trying to see if we really believe their story. How much do they put in the deal? If we're investing with an operator, we have an operator who has a $95 million fund. I believe, though I'm not sure the final number, I believe he was putting in the first 11 million himself. That spoke volumes to us when he's putting his own cash in, because somehow or another, magically, people seem to behave differently when their own cash is in the deal. That's really important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. You tend to work a little bit harder when you've got skin in the game. So I want to talk about underwriting for a minute with you. Vetting a sponsor, how are they looking at loan to value and cap rates and things like that? What are your going in cap rates today? How long are you holding a deal? And how are you projecting coming out?
One of our fund's goal is to invest in a diversification play. We want to have a diversified group of operators, geographies, asset types, assets, and strategies. The reason I say that is we have some operators who are very opportunistic. They'll buy like a self-storage facility, and if they get a fabulous offer on it a year and a half or two later, they might sell it. Then we have other operators who plan to buy and hold forever. I'm thinking of a couple guys who are around 40 years old. They literally plan to be holding these into their late 60s, 70s, 80s, etc. They have no plan to sell at all. So that's the answer on hold time. Now, I'm going to say something that might sound like heresy. I'm writing an article right now for Bigger Pockets, and it's called Why Cap Rates Don't Matter Sometimes. I don't know what Bigger Pockets will actually publish it as. They'll probably publish this in January 2022. I have no idea what they'll title it. They changed the title to fit their SEO requirements and all that. But that's the plan. An alternate title might be Why Self-Storage and Mobile Home Cap Rates Don't Matter, or something to get people's attention. But that's really what I mean. Here's why. I don't have all the data right in front of me, but a study that was done by a guy named Chris Bennett at 10 Federal at the time, he said 93% of multifamily above 50 units is owned by companies who have multiple assets, meaning that these companies typically have a staff and typically they have asset management and property management dialed in. Typically, they've done the value add and upgraded the countertops and cabinets and appliances and flooring and bark park and all that. But 90% of mobile home parks, 85 to 90, and about 75% of self-storage is owned by independent operators. In fact, half of all the 53,000 self-storage facilities in the US, that's about the same as Subway, McDonald's, and Starbucks combined, about half of those are owned by single asset owners, which are also known as mom and pop owners. And these mom and pops don't have the desire, the resources, or the knowledge to make upgrades and to increase income and to maximize value and ultimately equity for their shareholders. They don't have to because the cap rates have compressed so much in the last decade. Their values have typically doubled. And they've doubled while the operator continued to do what he always did, honestly, in many cases, is being mediocre. And they can continue to be mediocre and they can continue to get this great cash flow. They don't have to raise rates. I talked to an operator the other day that said he's owned a facility. They're the lowest price in town already, and they have not raised rates once in 6 years. I talked to another operator who said they've only raised rates 4 times in 28 years. Think of inflation over 28 years or even 6 years. It makes no sense, but they're making it work, and now their cap rates have given them a double value. Let's add one more example. We have seen so many acquisitions of mismanaged self-storage facilities where the owner operators are taking hundreds of thousands of dollars in salaries out. We know one in Grand Junction, Colorado, the delinquency rate was 80% at this facility. The owner was not able to collect or willing to collect from 80% of the people on a timely basis, at least. And so when you go into a facility like that at a 1, 2, 3, 4% cap rate, and you can turn it around in 3 to 6 months, and if you can get it operating at an 8% cap rate or a 10% cap rate in just a short time, and you've got an operator who has a track record of that, then I believe cap rates don't necessarily matter on the front end. That was a very long diatribe there, or monologue, I should say. I will honestly tell you quickly that on the back end, even if cap rates right now are 4 to 4.5% on the sales side, we like to see the pro formas projecting a 6 to 6.5% sale price, which means much more conservative than reality is what I'm saying, because interest rates could go up and cap rates would go up if they did.
What you're saying is you're being conservative in your underwriting. You're making sure that you're vetting your sponsor to be conservative in their underwriting. After being through 2008 and that whole crisis, you're looking at today, seeing a lot of the same things going on fundamentally wise, where there's really no fundamentals. You have to look at things differently. And that's what you're saying you're doing. You're seeing cap rates are compressed right now, but they're probably going to be some decompression moving forward. And you're trying to come out of deals at a little higher rate.
Yeah, that's right. What that means is if we're able to buy something that is stabilized at a 5% cap rate, we might say, okay, on the back end, we're expecting to sell it at a 6% cap rate. Somebody listening might say, well, that's not much different. Well, if you do the math, it is very much different, because dividing by a 5 versus a 6 cap is, I'm doing this in my head, so please forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's a 20% decrease in price to go from a 5 to a 6 cap.
Yeah, it's crazy.
20%, is a lot.
It's huge. I teach some underwriting, and I have a couple of coaching clients that I work one-on-one with and teach them underwriting specifically. We have a great tool that we use, but he asked me the other day, he just asked a simple question. He goes, so you make the point that when you add value, that it increases the property value. I said, yeah, do you know how that works? So we took the new other income that we added. In this case, it was a 20-some thousand dollars or something like that. I said, look, if the cap rate is 10% and you take this extra NOI, extra income, and you use the NOI formula and divide the 10% into that, you've just added a couple $100,000 in value to that property. I didn't understand it when I got in the business either. But today, when you see that, it makes you as an operator want to figure out how to increase value.
It's really amazing. I mean, if you think of taking a self-storage facility and adding boat and RV parking, let's just say you gravel an area, and you can add $10,000 a month to your income, that's $120,000 a year. At a 6 cap, you divide 120,000 by 0.06. You just added $2 million to the
Yeah.
value of your facility. And if you bought that facility for $5 million with $2 million equity and $3 million debt, you just doubled the value of the investor's equity by graveling a parking area and bringing in tenants.
One quick question. I have a couple questions here, and then I want to get into your book. In the self-storage space, we know in multifamily that when we look at a deal, your expense ratio is generally going to be around 50%. In the self-storage business, are the expenses like that, or are your expenses less in the self-storage business?
Yeah, it's all relative because when you buy and sell in self-storage, in theory, you should see a similar expense ratio, but 34% is the average going rate that we often see in self-storage.
Yeah.
What is that? 66% profit, 34% expense, to make it clear.
You made an interesting comment, and I have to circle back on this about these guys that don't want to sell. They have no plans to sell into their 60s. Where does it make sense? When I model a deal, there's a profit place somewhere. If I model it over 10 years, I'm usually hitting my highest profit point somewhere before that. 7 years, 8 years, hence exit plan, because
Right.
now I need to figure something out. How do I scrape
Yeah.
profit off to maximize my profit? When somebody's not selling a deal for that long, how does that help?
I'm really glad you asked. I think you're the first person that's ever asked that question that clearly. The answer is not being focused on IRR. So the internal rate of return, as you said, there's a curve. If you create a lot of value in the first year and can somehow magically sell a year later, we had a $7.1 million value add mobile home park that sold for $15 million in 10 months. The IRR on that to the equity was 347%. And that looked great. Everybody applauded. But we looked at it again and we said, what if they'd have held it for 10 years and got all that income and the increasing value adds they could have done? They would have taken them 4 years to fill up a bunch of vacant spots. Instead of selling it for 15 million, they could have probably extracted a lot of net operating income for 10 years and then sold it for maybe 21 million. Actually, there's an argument to be made. Warren Buffett famously said, they asked him what's his average holding time. He said, my preferred hold time is forever. So holding over a long period of time, a lot of people who've been in commercial or other real estate for 10, 20, 30 years say their biggest regrets are all the properties they sold. The mindset is basically that you extract value through net operating income along the way and refinances on a regular basis. You keep taking money out through refinance and then keep cash flowing, giving the cash back to the investors, taking all their risk and their equity off the table, allowing them to reinvest it, and then continuing to cash flow for decades.
So I just want to say right now to my listeners, stop whatever you're doing, rewind what he just said, and listen to that again. It's going to be really important that you take that in, because I think there's a lot that was just said there and a lot of merit to that. Let's just talk about a model real quick. So if I was going to put a deal together and we're going to raise private equity, let's raise $10 million private equity on this $25 million deal. We bring that private equity in and we plan to hold this thing for the next 30 years. We're going to go through a couple of loan cycles, and outside those loan cycles, let's re-raise money. Let's bring new investors in and take the old ones out, the ones that want to get out. That's an exit strategy. That's another plan to create that helps you maximize that profit, pull tax-free profit off the table. So it's an interesting thought. I don't know that I've ever thought of it, really.
I'm glad we talked about it. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, for sure. I can't believe nobody's asked that before. So interesting. God, I know I told you we're going to go for about 30, 35 minutes, but we're going to blow that right out of the water. So appreciate you being here. Hey, let's talk about your new book. I know you have a new book out. Tell us about that and tell people how they can get it.
Yeah, when I dove into self-storage a number of years ago, I decided first thing I wanted to do was line my bookshelves with more books and get all the books about self-storage. The problem is I went online and I found a really good book about self-storage marketing and sales, really very few books about self-storage. So I began to write special reports for our company, which eventually became chapters of a book. So I wrote this book, and Bigger Pockets was kind enough to publish it. I have to read it because I mess up the title if I don't. It's called Storing Up Profits, Capitalize on America's Obsession with Stuff by Investing in Self-Storage. It's by Bigger Pockets Publishing. As of just this week, it's finally available on Amazon as well. Bigger Pockets puts it out through their own publishing channels first for a month, and then it went on Amazon as well.
Nice. Awesome. I'm looking forward to grabbing a copy of that and reading it. Do we just live in a world where people are pack rats today? People just keep stuff because they want to keep stuff?
It's crazy. Self-storage has had a huge uptick since COVID. In fact, there are people downsizing as they close. These are all unfortunate situations. First, during COVID, we had college students packing their stuff in self-storage, not knowing if they were going back to their dorms. Then we had restaurants and bars shutting down over the last several years, or the last year and a half, I guess I should say. And they're packing their stuff in self-storage often. Then we had offices downsizing as people moved to online, and some of them put some of their stuff in self-storage. We have death, downsizing, dislocation, divorce, the 4Ds that are causing people to use more self-storage. So in America, at least, and oddly enough, self-storage has not caught on around the world at all. It's mainly an American and also a North American phenomena, which is really interesting. America's obsession with stuff.
So everywhere else in the world, people are just minimalists?
I have never really checked into that. I probably should. I don't remember for sure, but I think I saw a statistic that 90 or 98 or 99% of self-storage in the world is in America and Canada.
Wow. That's interesting.
It was very high, whatever it was.
Interesting. This isn't something we talked about, so if you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to. But how about your health? How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. I've been a hard-charging, hard-driving entrepreneur for 30 years, and I was probably hard-driving as I think about my childhood. I was as well, playing football and other sports like boxing and stuff. This is part of the integrity question. Is it really integrous for me not to have a Sabbath? Should I be doing emails till midnight every night and getting 5 hours sleep? No, but that's what I've been doing for decades. I've had to slow down in this last 2 years. I've had to face this issue of high blood pressure, which it's not really high, but it's probably high enough to be on medication. But I'm actually doing other stuff. Just to my right is my treadmill desk. And I'll be jumping up on my treadmill desk later today, hopefully to walk for miles while I'm typing and working and doing calls. I'm doing other things to take hold of my health, including juicing, trying to eat better, etc.
You were on a pretty strict juice regimen about a year ago when we talked.
Yeah, I'm still doing that, but I've really lightened up on it a lot. It was just so hard to stay on, especially traveling. Even with a travel juicer, it's just so much trouble. When you're going to a conference and going out at 7 in the morning to meet somebody for breakfast and then going till 11 at night, it was impossible to keep up this 13 juice a day regimen.
Yeah, boy. Interesting. I'm glad that you're healthy, and I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad that we got to talk about Jesus this morning. This is Insider Secrets. Any final thoughts that you want to share with the listeners this morning?
Yeah. So, like I said, I spent years wondering how to get involved in commercial real estate. I didn't know where the entrance plan was, if you will.
Good play, Paul. Good call.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll be here all week. But seriously, I took the last 1/3 of this book, and it's about 200 pages. And I took the last 1/3 of it to describe 7 different entrance plans to get into commercial real estate. Even if you don't like or don't care that much about self-storage, you might want to pick up the book to find out 7 different paths to get involved in commercial real estate, whether that's multifamily, self-storage, light industrial, whatever you want to do.
Awesome. Interesting. Let's shift gears a little bit. And 3 questions I always ask is a favorite book you've ever read?
I keep shifting on this. So one of my favorite business book for sure is The One Thing by Jay Papasan and Gary Keller. I think I've decided that my favorite personal book is A Different Kind of Happiness by the wonderful late Dr. Larry Crabb. who's my favorite author by far. He's talking about how we can be happy by loving people rather than seeking to be loved.
Oh my gosh. So cool. Best tourist attraction you've ever seen?
One of my bucket list items was Yellowstone, and I can't think of anything better than the time I had with my son looking at the geysers and all the other features in Yellowstone several years ago.
Did you run into Kevin Costner out there?
I missed him that day. Yeah, sorry.
Did you watch the show Yellowstone?
No, I haven't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's why I said, because Kevin Costner's in that.
Oh, I was thinking you were referring. See, I'm still stuck in the 90s. I thought you were referring to Dances with Wolves.
Oh, yeah, that too. And favorite place you've ever eaten?
Oh, my goodness. That is so tough. I saw that on the question list and I didn't come up with an answer then. It's probably the last good restaurant I've been to would be my answer. This week, I got to eat at La Yucca in Williamsburg, Virginia. We were on a little vacation there. So that's my favorite restaurant I'm going to name for now. It's a French white tablecloth French restaurant that my wife and my sister and her husband went to for dinner about 3 days ago.
Nice, nice. Awesome. Paul, thanks for being here. I appreciate your heart. Appreciate your knowledge, your experience, and your willingness to share. It's been a great show.
I really appreciate it.
Great conversation. Tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you if they're looking for self-storage information or a place to place some capital or want to get a hold of your book. Tell people how they do that.
Yeah, they can get the book at biggerpockets.com/storage, but I'm going to unsell my book right now. They can get that information about how to get involved in commercial real estate, at least a very condensed version of it, through my website at wellingscapital.com/resources. Now, I'm not doing an excerpt from the book if Bigger Pockets Publishing is listening, but I do have a course on there called Introduction to Commercial Real Estate. I've also got other stuff like Introduction to Self-Storage, Introduction to Mobile Home Parks, etc. So you can get that free at Wellings Capital, WELLINGS, capital.com/resources.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for being here. Hey, everybody, make sure that you listen to this a couple times because there were more than just a couple of golden nuggets in this hour. Appreciate everybody for being here. We'll be here next week. Insider Secrets is here always to bring you some relative content and help you in your multifamily and commercial real estate investing space. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Thanks, Paul.
You bet.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for joining us for another great episode of Insider Secrets. As always, Insider Secrets is brought to you by My Core Intentions. Wherever you hang out on social media, you will find Mike and My Core Intentions. Please like and follow us to get the most up-to-date real estate investing trends. Visit mycoreintentions.com, where you can get expert coaching on all things real estate investing and property management. If you're looking to become an expert, Mike's coaching will help you scale your real estate investment business. We're looking forward to having you back again next week for more Insider Secrets.